Okay, American federal government, I just finished scoring your papers on the chapter on civil rights. If you remember, for that assignment, I had a list of documentary videos you could watch. There was a few of those that students told me were dead links. I apologize for that. It's hard to keep those up to date. But remember, the purpose of this assignment was to get you to think about empathy. I just find that people are real quick to be willing to deny other groups of their civil liberties if they don't understand, if they've never walked a mile in their shoes, if they've never empathized with them. When you watch these videos, you become a part of that group. You understand their trials. You understand the discrimination that they faced and the struggles. What I also find with civil liberties as you watch these videos, it always takes such courage, whether it's John Lewis or it's Catherine Switzer in the Boston Marathon, if you watch that video, or it's Cesar Chavez at the theater, or it's any number of the people, the people at the Stonewall riots in the LGBT movement, or Rosa Parks. It takes an incredible amount of courage to stand up and say, look at me, I need to be heard. I'm being discriminated against because there's such a backlash, and they're like, oh, you are a freak, or you're this, or sit down and be quiet. And these people in the civil rights movement are truly trailblazers that are making the world a better place for future generations. And that's the story of these. Some of my notes, I was really pleased with a lot of your responses. I felt like the assignment had an impact on a lot of you. This year, more than any other year, a lot of students watched the documentary on the Stonewall riots, which is really kind of often seen as the beginning of the LGBT movement. It's not. I mean, it began before that, but it is a milestone where it's just the LGBT is just not going to take the treatment that they had been exposed to. Many students were surprised that homosexuality was a crime in this country. Yes, it was a crime in most states in this country until 2001, which is about the time many of you were born. It was a crime. You could be arrested. And there was a gay couple in Texas that was arrested for what was called sodomy. It was anti-sodomy laws. And the case went to the Supreme Court, Lawrence versus Texas, and it overturned that decision. That decision is actually under threat today since the Dobbs decision last year, because the Supreme Court could potentially overturn that, and then homosexuality potentially could be a crime again. I don't think it would happen, but it could under the Supreme Court's reasoning in the Dobbs decision that had overturned the Roe versus Wade decision, because that decision, the basis of that decision, it interpreted the Constitution as having a right to privacy, and they overturned that. And if you don't have a right to privacy, then states can pass laws banning homosexuality or banning birth control, as they've passed laws now banning abortions. So in that case, then, the United States would be in the same group as countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and many other countries in which homosexuality is a crime. It's been really sad. There's been so much vitriol and hatred towards the trans community. They've made for an easy target lately, whether it's bathroom bills or sports bills, because they're vilified as these monsters, and they're men that are disguising themselves as women so that they can prey on women. And nothing could be further from the truth. If you know a trans person, and again, empathy, if you know a trans person, they're the ones most likely, first of all, to suffer from depression and suicide because everybody's telling them that they're freaks. Second of all, they're the ones that are most likely to be bullied and to beat up in school. And it's just so sad, because I'm telling you, in 30 years, they're going to look back on this like we look back on the African American civil rights movement, and the people that yelled at the Little Rock Nine, or that arrested Rosa Parks. Today, it's like, what were they thinking? How could they be like that? I do believe that that's how people will look back. But there are still people that are plenty racist today, and homophobia and transphobia is very even acceptable. But they keep the fight. They keep going, LGBT, and they've made huge progress. Some of you did the one over Cesar Chavez and Hispanic. Other did African Americans. John Lewis had some of those. That was great. The women's rights issue is really important because you did have just recently the Dobbs decision that had overturned the Roe versus Wade decision. As an example of why this is part of equality, there was a woman, I read the article in the paper, that in Oklahoma that has filed a complaint because she has 4 children. She's pregnant with her 5th child. Unfortunately, the pregnancy, and I have the article here, and that is she was looking forward to their 5th child, but she had lower abdominal pain, extreme nausea, and dizziness. She felt sick and nearly passed out, and blood was soaking through her jeans. She was diagnosed with a partial molar pregnancy, a dangerous condition that could kill her. The doctor told him there's no chance the baby's surviving and that she needed to have an abortion. So she went to the hospital at the University of Oklahoma Medical Center in Oklahoma City. I'm reading from the Tulsa World. But she said an ultrasound technician refused to sign off on the exception to the state law that banned abortion because they could hear a heartbeat. So her husband was told they couldn't touch her until she was crashing, and that they should wait until in the parking lot until she was about to die. And they had to go to Wichita, Kansas to get that abortion performed to save her life. Oklahoma has effectively, like many other states since that decision, has banned abortion in all circumstances. There is an exception by the law, but hospitals won't touch it. They're too afraid of what might happen because the government could come and say, well, she wasn't really in danger. She wasn't about to die. And that's a women's rights issue. That's a civil liberties issue. It's a civil liberties issue and a civil rights issue. Civil liberties has to do with your basic human rights, and civil rights have to do with equality. And that's a huge issue as well. And I know abortion is a very controversial, sensitive topic, but that is a prime example of something that we see more recently, where recent laws have definitely have an impact on women in those circumstances. So a lot to unpack in that chapter, in these last 2 chapters. I hope you were able to read it. I was reading through the chapter. There's tons of stuff there over civil liberties and civil rights. And I'm kind of saddened in many ways. Online classes, it's so difficult for me to try to teach because there's so much I want to teach. But you got a lot out of that video, so I was happy about that. Keep doing the good work you're doing. I'm not hearing too much from people, which I take as a good sign that we're just moving right along, but I am happy to answer any questions at any time. Thanks.